anyway, what resonates with me with Aristotle, I think like this, like the almost like scientific analysis of virtue, I think is what really hits me with Aristotle, and the fact that he discusses a truth that human beings, our lives aren't just stagnant. We're not just one point. We're always going somewhere. We're always aiming towards a direction, and there's always a path, no matter what. The path goes whether you want it to or not. It's like you're always in motion, and he understood that. And so in life, with the virtue, it's not just like, oh yeah, it's something that's just here. It's like something that you actually practice and you work on and you build it into that aim. You're aiming towards something and you're progressing. So I would say that's one concept that really resonates with me with Aristotle. You know, because I feel like Socrates, like he kind of talks a lot of shit. He's like, this is right. Well, no, he makes great points. And like in the Republic, when Plato's representing Socrates through his work, they talk about it and they break it down and they talk about what is good and what is bad. But then you take that virtue and then Aristotle dissects it and like really like tries to figure out what is that, like is like what does that mean to be that. And of course, his famous idea of the middle path of it's a balance. Like everything is a balance. Excuse me. And virtue is a balance between two vice or two like sinful ways of being, if you will. And I think in the last podcast I talked about. Did I talk about courage? The famous one, courage is the balance between foolhardiness and cowardice. And so you have that middle ground. And yeah, I think that's interesting. Aristotle, the great scientist, one of the probably. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of historically. Might have some Indians, or I know somebody who's really big into Indian history or Arab history, and be like, this guy was a scientist way before Aristotle. But Aristotle was like, one of that I can recall, like one of the first true scientists analyzing the physical world. Dissecting it. I mean, I even heard, because him and his boy Alexander would, like when he was, traveling throughout the world, he would send him specimens of like plants, animals. Like Aristotle's going to love this, he's going to love to study this, so he made sure to send it back home, or back to Athens, should I say, where Aristotle was before the empire fell, and then he had to flee, of course.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the Aristotle quote? He says, when, I mean, I know you're very familiar with this, but when everything's going crazy, he's like, you know what? I won't allow Athens to commit the same sin twice. Because they killed Socrates, and he's like, well, they might kill me, so I better get the hell out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going on since we're bringing up Socrates, a point that I like about him, it's a critique of him, but I think the critique is very consequential and important. Someone made a critique within the Republic saying, Socrates, you don't ever answer any questions, you just ask questions. And I think that's an important part, because when we were talking about these aspects, what was the main point, right? What was the main question? It's like, what is a good man? What is a virtuous man? That was one of the main points within the Republic, I believe. And really, and this person gives their opinion, this is what I'm just going to use the word good. This is what a good man is. Oh, this is what a good man is. And then Socrates saying, well, what is good? And then through that, you really realize people having different definitions of these words that we're throwing around. So that really communicates to me that we may think we're talking about the same thing, but we're actually talking about very different things. And I feel like that's also commonplace with today when we say things of the same sort of nature. Is this right? Is this wrong? And then I feel like Socrates would say, well, what is right and what is wrong? Because if we don't establish those fundamental pillars of understanding, at least, right? Not even agreeing, what the word actually means, but just, this is what I mean by this word. And in that context, blah, 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 and then my argument can go from there. And I feel like today as well, we have a lack of understanding of what people are talking about. I feel like we could use some Socrates, someone who's questioning not just what people are saying, but what are the actual words that you're using.
Yeah. Yeah, no, getting to the very bottom of it all, the very core of it, Yeah, because like I remember from the Republic, he says they're having a debate, like they're talking about justice, and they're talking about
Was that it? Was that the main one? What is justice? Or one of the main ones?
That was one of them, yeah. And I remember, I forget all the characters. I remember Glaucon that's Plato's brother. He gives some input, and then Shoot, I forget some of the inputs, but I remember the sophist. What his point is, he says justice is essentially the will of the strong.
Right.
That's what it is. Like so might makes right. And that's what he says. And he's like, I won the argument. That's what it is. That's what justice is. And then like Socrates, like, wait, hold on here. Hold on, let's discuss that more. Let's go into depth about that. And then he uses the analogy of as with the ring of Gyges, which is essentially like, I mean, I would assume Tolkien. I don't know. I don't know if Tolkien ever talked about this. But we got the idea with the ring of power.
Hmm.
Because like essentially you put on the ring of Gyges, and you turn invisible, and like with that the power of invisibility, you could kind of do all sorts of crazy stuff. You
Yeah.
could like assassinate people real easy. You could, sexually assault people.
You
If
could.
you have the lustful desire. You can
Learning
do
a
all.
lot of knowledge you're probably not permitted to.
Oh, you can do all sorts of things. Yeah, just like you can steal anything, take anything, whatever you want, really, if you're invisible. So it's like essentially like, would that be a good thing? Would that be a good thing for somebody to abuse that power? But I think the point is that if there's not justice for all, then justice doesn't really exist.